This type of allegation is repulsive, I guess would be the word I would use. So now it's my job to find out exactly what's taken place.
It's another edition of Our Line Starts with Anson Carter and Keith Jones. I'm Catherine Tappan. Brian Boucher will join us in just a little bit, and there is plenty to talk about. Here's what's coming up ahead on the podcast. The latest developments with the Bill Peters accusations. 4 games for Robert Bortuzzo for a cross-check. Does the punishment fit the crime? Pierre Maguire with Blues head coach Craig Berube. Looking forward to that conversation. And Robin Lehner hates the shootout. We're going to hear his comments on that topic. An interesting one to discuss. But the story that has grabbed headlines, accusations against Flames head coach Bill Peters. One of his former players in the minors, Akim Aliu, claims that Peters directed racist language at him 10 years ago when they were together in the American Hockey League. 2 of Aliu's then teammates corroborated the story. The Flames and the league are currently investigating as we record this podcast on Wednesday afternoon prior to Thanksgiving. Ace, curious to get your thoughts first off, where you were when you heard the news and what your reaction was when you heard this.
Well, it was a typical day for me, KT. Just got up, started surfing the net, started reading the news, just like what I do every single day. And this came across my time feed, and I was thinking to myself, is this legit or what's going on exactly? Is Akim like trying to grab headlines? Because I know Akim, and he's had this reputation as being a guy that is hard to deal with and attitude problems. And I didn't know if that was the case or not, because you put yourself out there like that. And then I started doing more research about it, and Frank Cervelli from TSN went and talked to 2 of his former teammates. And that, for me, Jonesy, is what sold me. Because they weren't black teammates, they're white teammates. And they said, yes, this in fact did happen. And I was pretty sick to my stomach, because I've talked to Coach Peters several times, and he's been great. Like, he's been awesome to me. So the fact that here those words came out of his mouth, I was pretty devastated.
You played over 600 games in the NHL. Did you deal with this at the NHL level? When's the last time you dealt with racism?
Not at all. And that's the sad thing, to think that maybe this is happening behind the scenes. You don't really know about it, because I've never had that issue. I played in a lot of teams, played with a lot of guys, played for a lot of coaches. That was never the case. Last time it ever happened was I was at Michigan State, and there's a guy that played for Michigan, and he said the N-word to me on the ice. And I'll never forget, I said, you know what, I'll see you at the next level. And I was waiting from the term pro, and lucky for me, the guy was junk, or lucky for him, he was junk. He never played. I mean, he was a second-round draft pick. But that was the last time. So I've never, ever encountered that at the professional level before. So to have a coach do that, I mean, it was bad, because you're a gatekeeper. You know, it's not like you're a player saying this to me in the heat of the battle, and we're fighting out there, and we're saying whatever we want to say to get guys off their game. You're a coach, and you dictate whether or not a player plays or if he doesn't play. And that's wrong.
If Akim had come to you and asked your advice on this, what would you have told him?
Oh, I would have went right to the commissioner for sure. I wouldn't have hesitated. I would either called Gary or called Bill, the deputy commissioner, and said, Commissioner, this is the problem. This is what happened. We have this as evidence to back it up. And you can't have a coach at the AHL level or ECHL level saying these words to players, because they could really dictate whether this player plays the next level or not. And, you know, the hockey world is so small. So people go on what they hear without even taking the time to do their research to find out if it's really true or not. So if this gets out again that, oh, this guy's a troublemaker, like he has that same history in the past, and no one really backs it up to see if it's true or not, then he gets written off. And people are like, you know what? We can't believe this kid. He's just going to cause trouble for us. He's not one of us. Get him out of there and just wipe their hands clean.
You've had a relationship with Aliu over the years, from time to time, touch base with him. Why do you think he chose now to come out and bring this to the forefront once again?
Well, I could tell you why he didn't before. I don't think he wanted to get labeled as that guy. You know, I think as a black hockey player, we tried so hard to blend in and not create new waves. I mean, I held out twice. And I held up only because I wanted to get paid what I thought was fair. I'd always see guys, and you saw the comps when your contracts were up, Jonesy. See the comps of 10 players. And those comps, I'd say, well, Pat, I want to get paid in the middle of this. And every time my contract was up, it was always the bottom of that. Whereas I see guys that I'm sitting with getting paid the top of their comps. And I'm thinking, what the heck is going on?
And Pat being, just to
Pat
clarify,
Brisson.
yes, your
Pat
agent.
Brisson, CAA. So I was thinking, that's not good. That's not right. That's unacceptable. So I understand exactly why it took him that long, because he wasn't an established NHL player. I was established. He wasn't established. He was trying to get his foot in the door. So I could see exactly why he held it in, because he didn't want to rock the boat. But I can't reiterate enough that the fact that he should have came to me and said, listen, Anson, this is what happened. I know you're a black player. You probably dealt with some stuff of your own. How do I deal with this? And I could have given the proper guidance.
I've heard you talk before about the zero tolerance policy in the NHL when it comes to racism. How do you see this playing out?
I think Bill Peters is done. I really do. You know, even though it happened 10 years ago, can anyone say his feelings have changed?
No, you can't.
No, you can't.
No.
You can't tell. And it's affected one player. It probably ruined Akeem's career. You know what I mean? Because who knows what influence Coach Peters had on Akeem. And I'm more shocked about this because, like I said, I've dealt with him so many times. I've talked to Coach Peters a lot over the years when he was in Carolina, in Calgary, about his team, what's going on. And he's been great to me. He's been unreal. So that's the sad thing for me, is to think that someone could be so professional and perfect talking to you in one way, but behind closed doors, they could be thinking something totally different.
If he is to be fired, are you a believer in second chances, or was his second chance the opportunity that he had to bring Akeem into his office and discuss and apologize for what took place?
It's a good question, Jonesy. I'm a big fan of second chances. Like, people make mistakes. Like, we're human. You know, what he did was despicable and it was gross, but we're also human too. So I would give him another chance at some point to right that wrong. You know, I'm not going to say, okay, you're going up to the pasture. You can't coach the league ever again, because I've said before, it's a privilege. It's not a right to coach in the National Hockey League. And people do make mistakes. I make mistakes, you make mistakes, you make mistakes. But I think at some point we have to figure out a way to help the person that made that mistake and give them an opportunity to prove that they've changed themselves.
How do you think the Calgary Flames are handling this situation? How do you think the National Hockey League is handling it? I know you are very involved in the zero tolerance policy for the National Hockey League. You're an ambassador to speak out for many. You work a lot with Willie O'Ree and his foundation to try and generate more awareness and to get this stigma out of the game. So where are we right now?
I think the best thing the Calgary Flames have done so far is taking their time and talk to the right people. And don't just make some rash judgment. Like, sometimes you see stuff on Twitter and people rush to judgment saying, oh, that's the way it should be. No, this is a big issue. It's a big problem. And you want to do it right, because you're talking with a guy's livelihood too. You're talking about careers here. So the Calgary Flames and National Hockey are doing the right thing. They're taking their time. They don't want to be first to rush to judgment, but make sure you get it right. You make sure you get all your ducks in order and you get it right, because you don't want to screw this up, because this is going to affect a lot of people going forward.
When you look around, Ace, there's no African-American general managers in the NHL. There's no African-American head coaches in the NHL. Is that something that's going to change? It should be different, should it not?
It should be, but I think that one of the big reasons why you don't see that is a lot of the guys that played before I came, it was too fresh. The wounds are too wide open still. You know, a lot of guys I've talked to that played in the National Hockey League, say 10 years before I played, they went through so much stuff that they couldn't bear to stay and be connected with the league still and the game of hockey, because that represented everything and it reminded them of everything what they went through in the past. So guys walked away from it and washed their hands clean of it. Whereas now, players in my generation are still staying involved in the game, because we all love the game of hockey, and we see it as an opportunity to help kids that come after us, because we know what we've dealt with, and to be able to give guys guidance and help them navigate through those waters as the league is changing too. I think it's a big thing. So I definitely think, Jones, you're going to see a lot more guys getting involved in the game. I mean, Mike Greer right now is coaching in New Jersey. Right. So you're going to see a lot more guys, I think, as they retire, want to stay connected with the game of hockey.
I want to go back to Twitter and where this all originated. Akeem Aliu put his feelings and what he felt about this situation out there for the public to see on a social media platform. Reports have surfaced since that the National Hockey League Players Association wants to encourage players to come to them directly to handle the situation before it goes out publicly on everybody's social media platforms. Where do you stand on this, Ace? Because also, Aliu is no longer a part of the Players Association, correct? Because he's no longer a current player.
Right.
So that wouldn't even be a platform he could go to.
No, I think if he really wanted to, he could go to the PA, the Players Association, if he really wanted to. But Twitter is there for guys to speak their mind. So I'm okay with that. Myself personally, I'd rather deal with things behind closed doors first. And if I'm not seeing any action, then you go public with it. So I'm not a big fan of just rushing to public and making a big stink. If I'm going public with something, it's because I tried that other avenue, try to get things done behind closed doors, and nobody was listening to what I was saying. And then I felt that was my only chance to get my voice heard out there, is to use Twitter, use Facebook, use Instagram to get my message out there. People were just ignoring me.
Would you be shocked if other players came forward with the same issue, or would it be surprising to you based upon your own experiences?
I wouldn't be shocked.
Okay.
And this is the world we live in.
Yep.
You know, and I really feel there's a lot of coaches out there that are afraid that, what did I do in the past? What did I do in the past? What did I say in the past that could come back and haunt me now? You know, it wouldn't surprise me. I mean, we got a lot of good coaches too. I don't want to say that we've let a lot of bad apples because we've got a lot of great people in the National Hockey League. Jones, you played a long time. Kate, you've been involved in the game a long time. We've got a lot of good people in the league. But you just never know. Just like I didn't know about Bill Peters, you just never know about other coaches.
So when you look at this situation and the tweets that came out from Alou, he did reference an incident regarding Mike Babcock and his treatment of Mitch Marner at the time when Marner was an entry-level hockey player with the Toronto Maple Leafs. He directly put them together by saying apples don't fall far because Peters did at one time coach underneath Mike Babcock. What do you think about the way he had them linked together, and was that necessarily fair to put them together in the same category? They're two very separate instances that have now been linked.
Very separate, but I think that was Akeem's way of making what he was saying more relevant. You know what I mean? If he came out of the woodwork and just said, Bill Peters said this to me, people are like, well, why is that coming out now? But to link it with Mike Babcock made it more relevant. I think it made people listen more too, because you're talking about the former coach of the National Hockey League, the biggest hockey market in the NHL. So when you link something to Mike Babcock, then it becomes even bigger. And you've heard guys like Mike Commodore come out and Mark Frazier come out and attacking Mike Babcock. Listen, I don't think Bab's a bad person. He has probably done some horrible things as a coach, and that's what coaches do sometimes. But every player, they come out and speak and say, well, this is what really happened to me. I don't think fans should say, well, that guy just has an axe to grind with that, the coach. That's not really true. If guys are saying these things on social media and putting themselves out there, they normally have some pretty good intel in the background to follow that up. Whether they air that with people, that's up to the players. Like, I'm sure those guys knew about Mitch Marner and what happened there, but they didn't come out and say that. It took for another reporter or someone else to come out and put that out there. Now people are like, oh, wow, Mike Babcock, really, he's not a $50 million man after all. There is some warts on this guy. And right or wrong, it's going to be attached to him. And is he going to coach again? Of course, I think Babs will coach again in the league, 100%.
Based on the seriousness of the allegations, were you surprised at all how quickly things started to unfold? I mean, the game just ended. Bill Peters was coaching when the tweet was sent out, and he wasn't even talking after the game. That's how quickly things started to work. That's got to be a credit to the NHL.
It does.
The way they handle
Back
it,
to
right?
the zero tolerance policy. Like, the league is not messing around. They're about shutting this down right now. You haven't seen Bill Peters do any interviews. You haven't seen him behind the bench. You haven't seen him practicing. That's all coming from the NHL, I think. I think it's all coming from the Calgary Flames. I think everyone's unified in their belief and their message that this stuff will not be tolerated.
Where do we go from here? I mean, this is obviously something, and you talked about being around the game for a long time. As far as I can remember, you know, this is the biggest black cloud that we've had recently. It's certainly something that is concerning and probably the beginning of what will be many stories that we hear that come out, Ace. So how do we transition from this and move forward?
I think it's about keep having conversations. You know, you can't police everything, and you can't paint everyone with the same brush, but you have to have those conversations with everyone and let people know that this is unacceptable. You can't have these attitudes take part in our league. Like, the world is changing. You've got more players that are being diverse in the NHL than ever before. And I'm not just talking black and white and people of color. I'm talking about like Swedes and Russians and Finns and Swiss. Never had this diversity in our game before, Jonesy,
right.
Ever.
And really, it was one of the greatest things that I enjoyed about playing the game is we took people from all walks of lives and we put a jersey on. We were all wearing the same color jersey and everybody was part of that team. That's what I thought made my playing experience so great. And I still think there's a lot of that happens. It's unfortunate what's happened here, but it also brings out a conversation. That's a great conversation to have moving forward for any younger kids that are, want to play in the National Hockey League. It's got to be a safe place for them to play, not just when they get there, but on their way to getting there. And they have to feel comfortable. And I think that's where you move forward with situations like this. It will be dealt with. The league will do their part, and we'll move on. But it's important that we learn from the past and move forward and kind of help other people enjoy the same things we did as teammates of a collective group of guys trying to win a Stanley Cup together.
And we can't be afraid to have these conversations either, right? I mean, these conversations aren't easy. They're not fun, but they have to be had. If you want to move forward, you have to have these conversations. And to your point, Jonesy, about teammates, well, now that we're retired, we're fans now.
Yep.
And we go to arenas, and you see random people high-fiving each other. It doesn't care what you look like. As long as you're a Ranger fan or Capitals fan or a Blues fan, like, you're supporting that team. If that team scores, you're pumped. You're excited. You don't think anything about, well, what's this guy's race? What's their religion? What's their sexuality? No one really cares. So I think that same attitude should apply to players playing on the ice and people that are involved with the gatekeepers of the game of hockey.
Yeah, and you've got, I mean, Brian Burke and you know, the Burke family has done a tremendous job with the You Can Play campaign, which certainly encourages everyone to play this great game. And we have seen so many people from all different walks of life playing hockey and enjoying hockey and supporting the game of hockey. We also see a lot of young coaches in the NHL right now, right? We see, you know, Jeremy Colleton come into Chicago, even consider, you know, Rob Brindamore in Carolina, one of the younger coaches, you know, that's been making a great transition to the head coaching position. Is that going to change and help influence this new culture where these conversations will not be had on the ice anymore because it's a younger generation that has dealt with this their entire life, Ace, of not discussing or saying these kind of words anywhere?
It will, I think, because those same guys you named that are coach when I played with some of those guys, and I played against those guys. And I know if I was having those conversations among the room, or I was cool hanging out with guys in the room, and now they're coaching now, they're not going to be okay with those old school attitudes and mentality. They're going to shut that right down. So I think it will change because of these guys being a part of that culture, of that leadership core now that are leading men behind the bench, and say, if this stuff happened on their own team, like, I can't see Rod Brindamore being okay with something like that happening.
No chance.
You know, I can't see Sheldon Keefe, like these younger generation players. I don't see, or coaches now, being okay with that kind of behavior, that kind of speech. I just don't see it.
You talked about Akeem Alou getting a lot of phone calls, and, you know, you were trying to get in touch with him. I imagine you've had a lot of phone calls in the last, 48 hours as well. Without, certainly not ask you to name names, but what are some of the conversations you're having right now with people trying to, get the message out that you want conveyed?
I just try to tell people hockey's changing. And if you're not willing to change the game, get out of the game. Mm-hmm. As simple as that. It's more so like my high school friends are in disbelief. They can't believe, because my black friends in Toronto stopped playing hockey at the high school level because hockey, quote unquote, was a white sport. It wasn't a black sport anymore. So we'd talk basketball, we'd talk baseball, we wouldn't talk hockey anymore. But now they have children and their kids are playing because I kept playing. And they knew that I'm a stubborn mule, Jonesy. Like, when I get in my head, I don't care what you say to me. If I believe what I believe in, I'm doing it. Yep. And that was part of the why they're having their kids play the game of hockey, even if they're seeing an increase in the number of minority players playing. But they say, listen, Anson played. He didn't really care what anyone said. Yep. As long as you love the game, play the game. It doesn't matter if you don't have a player of color sitting next to you in the room or not. You all share the same thing, the love of hockey. So why are you let someone else, whether it's a black person or white person, tell you can't play the game? If you love the game, go ahead and play.
Awesome message.
Yeah. And Ace, I will say you are a tremendous voice for those that don't have the confidence necessarily to be their own voice. I know you mentioned you're always there, you're always available for the phone call. So I commend you for that as well. Certainly encouraging everybody to speak up. But if you can't for some reason, they know that they can reach out to you and gain some great advice. So based on your experience. So thanks for all that you've shared with us today.
Thank you, KT.
Yeah.